talking that from the 7 point, we completed the first point, that is the practice of preliminary. Second point is the main practice, which is the practice on bodhicitta. And within that, there is ultimate bodhicitta and relative bodhicitta. And we completed the ultimate bodhicitta practice. And now we're in the practice of relative bodhicitta. And in the meditation on relative bodhicitta, then there is the meditation on the shortcoming of the selfish attitude, and thereby overcoming the selfish attitude, and then meditating on kindness of all sentient beings. And by meditating on the kindness of all sentient beings, generating a sense of cherishing thought for others. And then in order to improve our loving kindness, compassions, then there is a meditation practice of Tonglen, taking and giving. And I think we're on that, the practice of Tonglen and taking and giving. And then and we talked about the practice of Tonglen last time quite a bit. And of course, is to train your mind to feel the pain and suffering of others, and the willingness to take on suffering and pain of others, or relieve them of their pain and sufferings, and understanding the other sentient being needs, and then feeling that their needs, and then the willingness, the courage to share and to give our own goodness, happiness, whatever we have to share. So that is where the verse says, practice a combination of both giving and taking, you know. And when we practice the taking, then we with a compassion mind, with a wish to relieve the sentient being from suffering and their suffering, then as we visualize, then and we breathe, it will come later, the breathing, then we take their suffering, and when out of loving kindness, then we give them all our happiness and the virtues. And so when we try to do that practice in relation to others, with others, sometimes for some individual, they might find difficult to do that with others. And for those, then you can start with your own self, which might be more easier. So that is where comments taking progressively from your own side. So again, the training of meditation, you start from one point and then you expand slowly, slowly, and then embrace all sentient beings and extend to all sentient beings. If you are finding it difficult to do that practice in relation to others, first you start with yourself. And you can visualize yourself in front of you, one, maybe that might be helpful. And then you can think of your own sufferings, you know, and taking all your own suffering on yourself. Think of your needs, and then giving all your needs, joy, happiness, virtues. And also you can think the suffering that we might be experiencing in the futures, you know, the suffering of in the futures, you know, like possibly the suffering of sickness, the suffering of aging, the suffering of death, the suffering of dissatisfied, so many. So trying to take all this suffering that might come in the future, now, at the moment, and then taking on yourself all this suffering that might be arising within yourself in the future, taking now as you breathe in, and you take all the suffering, and then you give all the, you know, solutions, all the joy, all the happiness. So you start with yourself, And once you are comfortable with yourself, you are good at that, then you expand to someone who's dear and close to you. And then when you are good at that, then you expand to someone more neutral persons. And then you expand to extend that to other sentient beings which you might have more difficult now, someone you dislike, have a conflict. And again, as you practice, and then as you become more easier and less conflict and less obstructions, then you can expand to all sentient beings. Then we expand that same practice to all sentient beings. So that is how. And then next is say, place those two astrate the breath. So in order to do this practice of Tonglen and giving, taking and giving, the Tonglen practice of taking and giving, to help that practice, then we can do by using the breath. So when you breathe, because we are breathing in and out all the time. And so sometimes if we use the breath for that practice, then it can be more helpful and effective for certain individuals. And so, when you imagine and then think and visualize taking the other suffering, if we can think as you breathe in, then all this suffering coming in the form of dark energies, something like smoke or another form of dark energy, and with the breath and going through your nostril and then going to your heart and destroying your selfish attitude and transforming it, and as you breathe and you keep on doing that visualization, that imagination, as though you have taken all their suffering and cause of suffering, all their problem and cause for all this problem. And then as you breathe out, then, you can imagine, visualize, and think that you are sending all your virtues, all your happiness, all the good things in the form of white light and energy together with the breath. And the moment that the breath, it touch the other sentient being, then they receive all the solutions to their problems, all the happiness, all the virtues. So using the breath as a, so up to here, then that is the practice of Tonglen, the taking and giving. So you use the Tonglen practice as the main focus of meditations during the meditation on relative bodhicitta here. So that is the main meditation in the main session when you are doing the meditations. So then, like every practice, every meditation, you end the meditation with the dedications. Okay, beginning you start with the refuge bodhicitta and requesting the blessings of the Guru and Buddhas, and then you can do Samadhi practice and some others, and then you do the main practice of the bodhicitta by using the Tonglen in here, as the main focus. And then at the end of your sessions of the meditations, then you try to end with the dedications. And then that is same with all the practice. Beginning and the main meditation, and at the conclusion with the dedications. Okay, so that we have to apply that all different meditation, all the practice. Those beginning and middle with the main practice, and the end dedication. So then during the post meditations, so when you are not in the meditation session, because you have to make food, you have to walk, you have to go to your work, you have to take care of your families, so you can't be in a deep meditation all the time. So when you are out of that deep meditations, in order to help the meditation that we did with the session, then also we have to apply that during the post meditation. So here, the post meditation, some of the practice that you can do, there are 3 objects, 3 poisons, and 3 sources of virtues. So what it means is, 3 objects are like, pleasant objects, unpleasant objects, and neutral object, So the object is neither, it appear to you neither pleasant or unpleasant. So most of the object when we encounter, either the object appear to us as a pleasant or unpleasant or neutral, it doesn't. So that is the three objects. According to three objects, the way three objects appear to us, then three different poisons or delusion arises. So three poisons means, so when there is an appearance of pleasant objects, then there is attachment arising. Attachment arises. When the object appear unpleasant, then aversions or anger arises. And when the object appear as a neutral, then there is appearance of continuity of the ignorance. So these are the three poisons. Okay, three objects, three poisons, and three sources of virtues. So when you are not doing meditations, when you are trying to walk in your kitchen or in your room or outside, wherever, we observe our feelings or our mind. And the moment you notice, attachment arises because of appearance of one particular object as a pleasant and attractive. When the attachment arises, then you are aware, attachment arises because of appearance of that attractive or pleasant objects. Attachment arises in me. When you try to observe and you try to be aware of that. Once you are aware of that, then you recognize I'm not only one who is experiencing suffering and pain because of this attachment. There are so many other sentient beings who are similarly experiencing a lot of pain, a lot of suffering like me because of their attachment. And their attachment arises because there is an object that appears to their mind as attractive and pleasant, just like me. So you recognize your own attachments due to such objects, and then you understand others also having similar like that, and also understanding the pain and suffering of others because of such attachments. And then you use that to develop a strong compassion, and then wishing all sentient beings to be free from such attachment. So that is the virtues, the source of the virtues. And so you use that, your own awareness of your own attachment and the suffering and pain that come from that attachment, and then you apply that others, understanding others just like ourselves. When so many other sentient beings have such attachment, due to attachment, they also have suffering and pain because of such attachment. So that which then you dedicate and you use this opportunity, then may all sentient beings be free from such attachment and suffering of such attachments, the pain and suffering that come through attachments. So then you transform your attachment. You use your attachments to develop a virtues of having understanding, compassion for others. And then, so then this practice helps to develop your compassion even further, which you try to develop during the meditation sessions. You apply same thing when we have anger. There is an appearance of object that is something like unpleasant, unattractive, harmful, whatever. And then anger arises, aversions arises, and be aware of that, recognizing that, and recognizing the suffering and the pain that comes because of such strong aversions, anger. And with your own experience, then also with our own experience, then we recognize the pain and suffering of others who are also, due to such objects, appearance of such objects, they also are developing aversions, angers, just like ourselves. And because of their anger and aversions, hatred, so forth, they are experiencing a lot of pain and suffering, just like ourselves. And with that understanding, then sincerely we wish them, all sentient beings, to be free from all the aversions, anger, hatred, and may they have, wishing them to have virtues of non-anger, wishing them to have the virtues of non-anger. In the first one, wishing them to have virtues of non-attachment. And then same thing when the object appear more like a neutral. So we don't have any attachment, neither we have any aversion or anger, but there is still continuity of our ignorance that arises from that objects. And then again, because of recognizing ignorance arising because of such appearance of objects, and because of the ignorance, then it induces many other delusions, and because that I'm suffering. Again, being aware of that, recognizing that, being aware of that, and then with that your own experience, also being aware and understanding also other sentient beings, due to such appearance of object, they also have such ignorance. Ignorance arises, and due to ignorance, again, delusion arises, other delusions, and due to that, they also are suffering and going through a lot of pain by myself. And because of that understanding, the pain and suffering of them, and the cause of suffering and pain, then sincerely from your heart, you wish them to be free from all this ignorance. Wish them to be free from all the ignorance. Wish them to have a virtues of non-ignorance, the wisdom. So that one we try to apply when we are in post-meditations, time to time. And then we transform in that way. And so that is the meaning of that verses. Remember this by repeated recollections. And practice every activity by these words. So whatever we are doing throughout the day, when we are awake, of course, when we are asleep, then we don't have the awareness like some of the practitioners, but at least when we are awake, then, we try to remember and recollect and be aware all the time. And then trying to develop sense of concern, sense of closeness, sense of love, compassion to each and every sentient beings. So we try to bring that not only during the meditation, but when we are off of the cushions, when you are not deep meditations, post-meditation, we try to remember, recollect that all the time and try to practice that as much as that all the time. And in order to help us to remember that, in order for us to remember and recollect and remember the practice, then we try to recite the word or verses all the time. For example, there are the verses that you find in Nagarjuna's, Shantidevas, and also in Guru Yoga, where they says, may all the suffering of others ripen on me, may all my happiness ripen on others, please, Guru Deity, please bless me, like that. So there are different verses of that online practice in different And you can use whatever you connect more strongly. You can use the Nagarjuna one if you connect more strongly. You can use Shantideva one if you connect more strongly. You can use from the Lama Chopa, Guru Yoga, if you connect that verses. Or also in 37 practice, Bodhisattva practice, there's also verses that, basically the idea is same. The verse might be slightly different. The word might be slightly different. Sometimes it's 2 words, sometimes it's 4 words, 1 verse, but it doesn't matter. You memorize that one of them, and then you try to recite that all the time. And when you recite that, then it helps your mind to remember that practice. So the words are a tool. I don't remember which Lama, one of the great Tibetan Lama. He used example. He said the words are like a cane. When you get old, or if someone has some problem with their legs, they use the cane. Words like cane of that support the old man, of the meaning of the old person. Okay. So the main thing is to reflect, contemplate on the meaning, or meditate, whether you are reflecting, contemplating, meditating on the meaning. But to help to remember the meaning, then we use the word as a tool. So same thing here, we're trying to recite the verses that help us to remember, recollect the practice of Tonglen and on Bodhicitta. So then you recite that all the time. And sometimes also it will be helpful when you are focusing on, let's say, practice such as Tonglen, to have a verse written and then have everywhere to remind you all the time. You can have that verse in toilet. So when you go to bathroom, it reminds you. It can have in your kitchen when you are cooking, because it is there, then it reminds you. You can have in your dining hall, living room, and because when you are eating, drinking, you see that, it reminds you. And then you have in your bedroom. So then when you, and you can have it also in garden. So the idea is to put there to remind you all the time. At the moment you see the verse, then it reminds you, and then you take few moments. It doesn't mean you have to take half hours, even if it's few seconds, few minutes to reflect, contemplate on that meaning. So that is, so in that way, you can see all the very systematically, the practice is built very systematically, meditative session and post-meditative sessions in all practice. And in meditation, there is a beginning, middle, and end, all of that. And the reason it is done is to help our practice to make it stronger. So the post-meditation help the meditation sessions. The meditation session help the post-meditation, then they support each other. Because even you are good at meditate, when you are doing a meditation session, you are pushing and you are meditating, reflecting, contemplating, meditating. Maybe you started to feel, love and compassion, because your meditation is good in that moment. Then you are off the cushions, off the meditation, because you have to do your job, works. And then when you do work, then if you forget completely, then your feelings started, then it is no more there. But during the post-meditation, even though you are not in cushion and really meditating, but if you try to remind yourself and you try to still connect with practice that is related with that, what you did in meditation, then it still keep alive. It's like, fire that you keep on adding wood so that the fire doesn't run out, but it continue all the time. So then your practice continue throughout the day. And then because of throughout the day, your practice, still you are connected to that practice in some way. Then tomorrow, when you do the meditation, that meditation becomes even more helpful, even more stronger, because you have been doing more or less doing that meditation in some way, even when you are not on cushions all the time. And so that is how, so this is also here, practice every activities by those words. So that is what it means, that one. So then with that, we complete the second point. The second point, that is practice and meditation on bodhicitta, ultimate and conventional bodhicitta. And that is the main essence and the heart of all these teachings and all this practice. Three is transforming. The third point is transforming adversity, difficult, challenging situation into the path. Transforming suffering into the path. Transforming the obstacles into the path, transforming the suffering into the path, transforming the difficulties, challenges into the path, the adversity. So that is the third point is that. So therefore, here it says, when the container and its contents are filled with evil. So container here referring to the environment, okay? The place, the environment. And its content is referring to the sentient being that is living in that environment, in that place. So when the place, the conditions, and the sentient beings that are living in that place and environment are filled with evil, too many adversity, too many obstacles, too many problems, too many challenges. Either it is created by the element itself, the environment itself, the external condition itself, or whether it is created by the living beings inside, whether it's human beings or other living beings. So when they are, when those sentient beings and those environment, when they are filled with a lot of delusions, such as anger, hatred, too much selfish attitude, self-centeredness, too much self-importance, too much greediness. And so filled with almost also much such a delusions. And due to such a delusions, then they create a lot of suffering, pain. Obstacles, challenges, When that happens, then here change this adverse circumstances into the path to fully awaken. So when that happens, then instead of being overwhelmed by such negativities, instead of being overwhelmed by such suffering, pain, problem, obstacles. Instead, we try to transform that into something positive. We try to transform that into path to the enlightenment. So, and if we can do that, then the more challenge there are, the more better it is. The more suffering, the more better it is. The more obstacle, the more better it is. The more adversary situations or circumstances, the more better it is, because you have more condition to transform into the path. It's like you are having more resources, to transform into the path. Then problem doesn't become problem for such person anymore. Obstacle doesn't become obstacle anymore for that person. Difficult does not become difficult for that person anymore. Challenge doesn't become challenge anymore. Adversity, circumstance, situation doesn't become adversity situation for that person anymore. The suffering does not become suffering anymore for that person. So it's not easy, but if we can train and if we can do that, then that could change. Not only it lead us to because we are able to change and transform into the path to enlightenment, so therefore it helps us to develop quickly a stronger love, compassion, bodhicitta. It leads us closer and closer to enlightenment on a spiritual level. It brings us closer and closer to enlightenment, but at the same time, your life changes. Your attitude changes, your life changes, your experience changes. Immediately, obstacle doesn't become obstacle anymore. You don't see the obstacle as an obstacle, but you see that obstacle as an opportunity to transform into the path. It is like, some people, like there are people who collect garbage. So from garbage, they transform something, they make something from it. And then they sell, whether they're from garbage, whether they are making energy or many different things. So for those people, when they see garbage, they are happy. Do you get it? Because that garbage helps them to transform in something so they can make living or earn something. For other person, garbage, when they see garbage, they are upset. Similarly, same thing, just like garbage can be transformed into energy or some other things that can be meaningful, beneficial. Same way, when we are able to, through practice of such lojong, mind training, when one is able to transform all of them into the path, then when obstacle comes, they are not disturbed by the obstacles. They are not disturbed by the obstacles, challenges, difficulties, sufferings. They are not disturbed, They are not overwhelmed. Instead, they might even feel joyfulness in that. Joyfulness in that. Oh, I have more. Oh, now I get even more. I'm getting even more sources or resource to develop further. I'm getting more resource to transform and change into the path. I'm getting more cause and conditions to develop my path even further. So, so once you have that kind of attitude in dealing with such situation, then your life will be totally different. Nothing really kind of overwhelm, burden you, stress you. And nothing really make you, so angry, upset. Depressed. If we really think, why would you get upset? Because when we have some challenges, difficulties, pain, obstacles, because we don't know how to deal with that, so we see obstacle as an obstacle, suffering as a suffering, pain as a pain, difficult as a difficult, challenge as difficult. So because we see them, this is obstacles. The moment you label and you see it as an obstacle, you have some aversions. The moment you see it as a difficult, then you have certain level of aversions. And through that, anger and upset arises. And also depressions, also like that, you want to achieve something, you want to accomplish something, and then you see something arising which create obstacles and difficult, and you see as a difficult and obstacles to accomplish what you want to accomplish, to achieve what you want to achieve, to get what you want to get, and unable to do that, then it leads to kind of unhappy mind. And that unhappy, slowly, if we don't take care of it well, then, things add up and become worse and worse. And then you started to lose maybe trust, confidence in yourself or your ability and many other things. And then you slowly, you feel hopeless. And there's the kind of feeling of no hope. And slowly, then that can lead to a depressions. So, a lot of those pain and suffering, whether it's a depression, whether it's anger, aversion, all of them, you see because not being able to transform those adversities, circumstance, situation in something positive. And if we train to transform them into something positive, such as path to enlightenment, then we can overcome all of those suffering and pain that are a product of not being able to transform that. And so how to transform them, it doesn't kind of go so detailed here. It just said transform, but in other mind training, in other lojong, you can see many different ways of practice, many different ways of reflecting, contemplating, to transform all of those adversities, circumstances, situation into the path to enlightenment. From the understanding of karmic point of view, that is one of one way of transforming it, by taking the responsibility on oneself and seeing, is sometimes, even when we try so much to change, and because we want to change in certain situations, or maybe because we want to improve, And we might have done everything that is on conventional world to improve, to change. There's nothing that has been left behind where you have not tried, that we have not changed from the conventional point of view, but still sometimes you are unable to change. Still you can't change, still you can't, unable to improve, despite trying everything that you can think of, everything that there is outside to change. And in those cases, instead of being so upset, angry with the situation itself or with yourself or your ability, or you just say, I try my best, but it must be karma. It must be karma. It can be such a relief once you are able to accept that, instead of being so harsh on oneself or one's ability because one is unable to change, unable to improve. You know. So through the practice or understanding or applying the understanding of karma, it makes your mind such a relief, just accepting instead of being too harsh, angry, upset with yourself or your ability for not being able to change, for not being able to improve, whatever. Or sometimes we have a lot of anger, hatred towards others because we blame them for the situations, the painful situations, the difficult situations. And because of that, again, we experience a lot of pain. Not only we experience whatever difficult obstacles, painful situation, but on top of that, because of our so much anger and hatred, you know, we intensify the pain and suffering much more. So whatever someone might have contributed towards some painful situation, that might have lasted for 1 minute. But our anger and hatred that we hold on because of that for days, weeks, months, years, we continue to suffer for that long. But once we have deep understanding of the karma and being able to accept from the karmic point of view and saying, oh no, the reason why I'm receiving this kind of situation is because of my previous karma. And to be able to accept that, then there is no more anger, hatred towards that individuals. And when you are able to let go of that anger, hatred, then you stop suffering anymore. Then you stop suffering. Through that is how we transform the pain, suffering. And because with our own pain and suffering also, you know, we try to be aware of that pain and suffering. Whatever pain and suffering that we are going through, whether it is a physical pain, suffering, or whether it is emotional pain and suffering, whatever it is, being aware of that, and then also recognizing I'm not only one who is going through that kind of pain and suffering. There are so many sentient beings who are going through similar, or in some cases, even worse pain and suffering than myself. And by feeling others' pain and suffering due to our own experience, then trying to connect, trying to feel oneness, same. We all are in the same category that we are experiencing pain and suffering. And with that feeling of closeness, oneness, same, then we try to cultivate compassion and wishing them to be free from suffering because it's so unbearable, because it's so painful, because I can feel it's so unbearable, so painful for me. I can understand they are also going through such an unbearable pain and suffering. Therefore, may they be free from all their pain and suffering. May they never have to experience such pain and suffering in the future. May I be able to help them to free from the suffering and the pain and the cause of pain and suffering. Through cultivating such a virtuous thought, such a virtuous mind, then we transform that negative energy to something positive energy. Now, because of your pain, you develop sense of more compassion to others. When you utilize it that way, and then that pain has been useful because it helped us to develop a virtuous mind, a compassionate mind. And because of that virtuous mind, that compassionate mind, it helped us to get closer and closer to enlightenment. So then you started to appreciate that pain because the pain has become meaningful in that purpose. And when you started to see the pain and suffering has meaningful, then you don't have strong aversion towards that. And if you don't have strong aversion to that, then it is not as painful. Then it's not as painful. So again, that is how we transform our pain, suffering, obstacle, whatever, into the path in that way. Also, when painful experience, suffering experience, when challenges, difficulties, obstacles arises, again, understanding of the nature of samsara. Well, with that, then being aware of that and to be able to bring that understanding in that situations. And saying, you know what? That is what life is. That is what it is. Samsaric. It's nothing kind of specific to me. It's the general nature of samsara is like that. Because sometimes we feel, everyone is having a success and I'm the one who is struggling. Everyone is having a good time. I'm the one who is having a bad time. Others are not having obstacles, but I'm having obstacles. Others are not struggling, I'm struggling. And when we feel that, again, the pain and suffering much more intensified, more stronger. But then understanding, we all are in samsara. As long as we are samsara, that is what it is. So then once you have that understanding on deeper level, then again, the pain, the suffering, that negative feeling, whatever different emotion that is arising, negative emotion arising because of that situation, started to kind of reduce, the intensity of that feeling. And then also because of that, why do we have to experience such a pain and suffering and difficulties in samsara? Because it's a result of delusions. And so with that understanding, then if you don't want that pain and suffering, then you have to stop the cause and condition that bring that kind of pain and suffering. That means you have to stop or cultivating more delusions. And so then that situation help us to practice more strongly. That situation helped us to understand, practice more strongly. And if that happens, then again, you have been able to transform into a path to the enlightenment. And I've seen, also even in my own family and outside of my family, some of people I know, they were faced with a lot of difficulties, challenges in their life. And some of them say, I'm done with all these samsaric things. I'm done with all these samsaric things. I try and the result has always been same. And because they have faced so much challenges, difficulty in that, and and then they decided to dedicate their same totally to the spiritual path. And once they dedicated totally to the spiritual path, they have less financially, they have less now financially than before they used to have, but they are much more happy, much more happy. So their life was transformed and changed from being unhappy to happy. Once they started, and they would not have changed their lifestyle, or they would not have changed their direction if they haven't faced such a difficulties at one time. But that difficult situation kind of direct them in a certain way, because they saw the uselessness of these samsara activities, trying to make money and running after money, and then you lose, and then again you fight, and again all of that, and somehow that really got in their mind, and then they decided, I'm done with that, and they decided, and they started to go in a more spiritual path. And of course, we are not talking about enlightenment, because now they are practicing more sincerely and more practice. Definitely they are getting closer to enlightenment. Definitely in the future, they will have better rebirth. But even in this life, what I've seen, they are much more happier. They don't have sense of competing with others, trying to get better and all of this, and they are just satisfied and happy. Financially, some of them still struggles, but that is not a big case. For example, even in my own family, that happened to my dad, maybe 40 years ago. In terms of finance, he doesn't have anything. So for the last 40 years, he has been supported by his children. And he's fine with that. And if they can't support, still he seems to be not worried. But for last 40 years, he didn't end up in the road. He always has a place to stay, food on his plate. And he has time to practice all the time, dedicate himself, and so he doesn't have any saving, anything. He lost everything more than 40 years ago. And then after that, because he worked so hard to come to that, at that stage, at that time, and he was successful at the beginning of his life in terms of financially. In terms of financially, he was quite successful man. But then certain situations, and he lost everything, and then he said, I'm done with that. And then he saw, there's uselessness in that. And he decided the path is the spiritual. And he took that directions, decided that directions. And luckily, his children was have enough and supportive, and they have been supporting him, and so and he, much more happier. And I've seen not only him, many others as well, similar. So he could have gone either way, he could have been completely broken, completely depressed, and relying on alcohol and drugs, whatever, to overcome that pain, sufferings, everything. He could go that way too. When he lost everything, that means almost you can feel you are failure, that you cannot support your families. But he didn't allow that. Instead, he transformed into something on the path. He directed into the path instead, spiritual path. And there are many other individuals that I know within our community who has little similar experiences, who are very successful businessmen at one time, and then everything started to go down and they lost everything. But then they transformed that into something to direct them in the spiritual path. And now they are really, really totally dedicated in Dharma all the time, all their times. And even though we can't see, futures, even we can't see with our eyes, even I cannot see their futures. Even I cannot see whether the spirit, in terms of enlightenment, whether they are getting closer to enlightenment or not. Of course, logically it will. But immediately what I see, they are much more happier. Much more happier. And I think that is great. Okay. So that is, so difficult challenges can be source of virtues and path if you can utilize it in the right way. And that's why I'm giving some example, and especially personal example, because it's more closer and that I've seen, not just in the book, but that I've seen with my own eyes around in my life, closely. Okay, thank you very much. Sangjo Senjo Remboche, Make Pananke Yoche, Jawa Nyamba Meba Yang, Kong Le Kong To Peo.